Alright, so right here I am finding the missing side because it has me solving for the indicated variable. In this case, that's x. So the first thing I'm going to do when I'm doing trig on a right angle is go ahead and label opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So using the angle opposite that is right here. Adjacent to that angle is right here. That means next to, because this one is the hypotenuse. So it's wanting me to find x, which is hypotenuse, and it gives me 13, which is opposite. So that means I'm going to use the sine function because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So, TOA. So sine of the angle, and the angle is 26, is equal to opposite, which is 13, over hypotenuse, which is x. So this is the setup. Now I have to solve for x. So when I go through this equation and I try to solve it for x, I'm trying to get x by itself. And x being 13 is being divided by x, so I don't know how to undo this 13 on top. So I'm going to undo the x first because it's being divided and just move it to the other side. When I do that, I get x times sine of 26 equals 13. And now because this is x times this, I do know how to get rid of that. So I'm going to divide both sides by sine of 26 to get that off of the x. And when I do that, I get 29.655. I'm estimating out 3 places. So that's how big that side is, my hypotenuse. So same thing here. I'm going to go ahead and label O, H, and A. So opposite, adjacent, using this angle, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. And this time they gave me these two sides and want me to find theta, but that's using opposite and adjacent. So I'm going to use tangent because TOA, opposite and adjacent. So tangent of the angle, see this time I don't know the angle, so I'm going to use theta, equals opposite 15 over adjacent 5.9. So now I need to get in here and figure out what is theta. And right now theta has tangent being taken of it. So I need to undo tangent, which is using the tan inverse. That undoes that. So when I do tan inverse of the left side, I'm left with just theta. And when I do tan inverse of the right side, I get 68.529 degrees. And you're estimating because you had to go round out 3 places. Then I have these word problems. So I am going to draw a right triangle. And it talks about you're flying a kite. It gets stuck in a tree. So here is my tree. Here's the kite. You have let out all of the kite string, which is 65 feet. So that would be right here. So this is 65 because you are standing on the ground and it's getting stuck in a tree. You are standing 15 feet away from the tree. So here would be 15. It wants to know the angle of elevation. So that would be this angle from you to the tree. So using all of that information, using this angle, I'm going to label opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. And this gives me hypotenuse, and it gives me adjacent, and wants me to find theta. So I'm going to use cosine, because cosine of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent was 15. The hypotenuse was 65. So now I'm going to try to get in here and solve for theta again, and theta is having the cosine taken of it. So I need to undo cosine by doing cosine inverse. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And when I did this, that undid cosine. Cosine and cosine inverse undo each other, so I'm left with theta. And then on this side, I get about 76.658 degrees. So that's this angle of elevation. using the same picture, they're giving me different information this time. So I've got my tree over here. I've got my kite that is stuck in the tree. Here's the string. Here am I. They tell me that the angle of elevation is 56. So I know that this is 56 degrees now. And they said I'm now standing 30 feet away from the tree. So that would be here. How tall is the tree? So it wants to know how big is this tree. So that's where my X is. And again, I'm going to turn around and label opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. And opposite and adjacent is the ones that I'm talking about, because I'm talking about the tree and the ground. And then I was given the angle of elevation. So opposite and adjacent is tangent. Tangent of, the angle is 56. They gave it to me this time. Opposite is X over adjacent is 30. So I need to try to get X by itself. So I'm going to, right now X is being divided by 30, so I can multiply both sides by 30 to get rid of it. And I can just type this in my calculator. X equals whatever 30 times tangent of 56 is, which is 44.477, and it's estimated, because I rounded, feet. That's how tall the tree is. Alright, this one has me setting, when it says evaluate all these, it just wants me to set up the ratios of sine, cosine, and tangent. So the first thing I'm going to do is label opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse again. So here's the 90-degree angle, so this is hypotenuse. Here's the theta, the angle they're talking about. So this is opposite, because it's across from it, and then adjacent is next to it. So when I'm doing this, I need to, sine uses opposite and hypotenuse, so I can do that one. Sine is O over H. So sine of theta is opposite, which is 11, over hypotenuse, which is 13. Cosine uses adjacent, because that's A over H. So before you can tell me what that ratio is, you have to figure out what is this. And I don't know what it is. I wasn't given an angle, so to figure out that third side, I need to do Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, where C is the hypotenuse. So this is 13 squared. A is 11 squared, and I need to find this other side right here. So 121, and then 169. B squared is equal to 48. So technically, when I do this here, I'm taking plus or minus the square root, but minus the square root will make sense because this side can't be a negative length. So I get B equals, and then 48 comes out as a decimal, which means that it's a radical that just needs to be broken down. And I can break this down to 16 times 3. 16 is 4 times 4. 4 is a couple. So this is 4 square root of 3. Again, it's technically plus or minus, but that doesn't make any sense in this case because I can't have negative 4 square root of 3 as a side. So this adjacent side is 4 square root of 3. So when I go to do cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse, I would do 4 square root of 3 over 11. So cosine of theta is adjacent, so 4 square root of 3, over hypotenuse, which is, 13. I think I said 11, but it's 13. Tangent. Tangent of theta is opposite, which was 11, over adjacent, which is 4 square root of 3. This is technically the ratio, but as we learned in the radical unit, I can't leave a radical in the denominator, so I have to rationalize this denominator, so I'm going to have to multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 3, because I can't leave it like that. So I get 11, because it's an outside number, 3, because it's an inside number, and then 4 times square root of, I can multiply those together because they're both inside, which is 9. 11 square root of 3 over 4 times square root of 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So I have 11 square root of 3 over 4 times 3, which is 12. So that's tangent. Here's cosine's ratio, and here's sine's ratio. The next one, it didn't give me a triangle, but it told me what cosine was, so that means I get to make my own triangle because I want to visualize what this looks like. So I've got my right triangle. I'm putting theta here. You can put it wherever you want. But using that, I'm going to go ahead and label hypotenuse. This will be opposite and then adjacent. And cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So if that's the case, then 3 would be the adjacent and hypotenuse would be the 7. And it wants to know tangent of theta. And remember, tangent is O over A. But I wasn't given opposite, so now I'm going to have to find that. So just like I did in the one before that, in order to find it, I should do Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A would be 3 squared plus, I don't know this other side, equals the hypotenuse, 7 squared. 9 plus B squared equals 49. Trying to get B squared by itself, so I would subtract 9. And I get B squared equals 40. Plus or minus the square root, so I get B equals, technically plus or minus, whatever I get when I break down 40, which breaks down to 4 and 10, 2 and 2, and 5 and 2. 2 leaves. 5 and 2 are still inside, which multiply back to give me 10. So this is 2 square root of 10. So that means this side opposite is 2 square root of 10. So if I'm doing my tangent, which again is opposite over adjacent, then tangent of this angle would be 2 square root of 10 because that was opposite over adjacent, which was 3.